I'm LaShawn, and I support moms who are empty nesters who happen to be navigating parental estrangement by prioritizing your accountability, your healing, your self-care, and a commitment by you to lifelong learning, because there's no evolution, you don't evolve, there's no change with old information. And the only way that you can get new information is by learning, whether that be through reading, watching a video, attending conferences, whatever tools necessary. Those tools are what you can use to build the woman that you're excited to wake up to. Today's topic is about accountability before your healing. And it's a topic that, on this path, a lot of people don't want to have that discussion about, especially when it comes to parental estrangement. I did a post this morning where I discussed the reason that that pillar is so important, accountability being the foundation that you're going to lay the remainder and the rest of your life on. It's not just in the case of parental estrangement, it's just overall in personal development. You cannot address the issues or the things that need to be addressed within you as the individual without accountability first. In the world of parental estrangement and family dynamic of parental estrangement, which, if you're here, that may be your story. You may be interested. Maybe that's not your story, right? Either way, this is an informational video. I'm not a mental health care provider of any sort. Excuse me. I am a coach, and I'm coaching based upon my experiences and how I've been able to successfully manage to keep my sanity during navigating parental estrangement. It's a very difficult family dynamic to experience. As a mom, it was important to me to come and share my story with other moms who may be also navigating parental estrangement. Accountability being one of the pillars, one of the 4 pillars of the matriarch code in this community, is one of the toughest conversations to have with parents, because, and I'm speaking from a Gen X point of view, many of us grew up with parents who were the boomer generation, maybe even parents who were, I think it was called the greatest generation. I can't remember who comes before the boomers. But many of us grew up with parents and grandparents from those generations. Through those generations, there was a mindset of children are to be spoken to and are not to speak. They speak when spoken to, right? There is also the belief system that it is because I said it is. And a lot of us who may have had to navigate toxic family patterns with our parents from those generations have had to come to terms with them not taking accountability for harms they may have caused. It's not the easiest conversation to have with the Gen X generation always, because many of us hold on to those toxic thought patterns, right? In terms of parenting. If something happened, it was because I didn't know any better, and you're just going to have to accept that as fact, and we don't go any further than that. That's it. I'm not apologizing for what I'm not responsible for, basically, is the mindset. That mindset does not set and settle with the next generation under us, the ones that came after us, because they have new information. They have a different way of understanding things and of viewing things, because they have more insight, because there are more access to information than we had at their ages. I wanted to come in and talk about this today because it's part of what sustains parental estrangement, a lack of accountability. Now, how does that accountability play into sustaining parental estrangement. Well, imagine how you feel if this is, your story with what you may have experienced with your parents, right? When you address some things with them that may not have been of the best situation for you as a child, right? Maybe there were some child traumas that you experienced, some childhood abuse. And maybe they didn't take that seriously. Maybe they didn't consider your heart in that, right? How that affected you and had an impact on your life. There's a way you felt about that, potentially. And maybe you handled it in a way where you forgave them. You just said, you know what, they're not going to apologize. I don't want to lose the relationship with my parent. And so I'm just going to, carry on as if it didn't happen. And we'll skip over that portion of my life and don't have that discussion so that it makes everyone comfortable. And I don't have to deal with them being angry at me or upset with me or not talking to me because I don't want them to, or I want to address what happened, right? Imagine how you felt. How did you feel when it felt as if someone wasn't validating your experience or how you felt? That's how your children feel. And even if you were putting on the hard outer shell, right? Even if you were putting on the body of armor and you've been able to make a good life for yourself in spite of the circumstances you may have faced as a child, that doesn't mean that that's the same story for your children. It's only fair to give them an opportunity to voice how they felt, right? It's not about, I didn't know any better. And I don't have to take accountability for that time in my life because I didn't know any better. That's not okay. And that's the part where I myself personally had to come to terms with. Those who were my caregivers, who were my parents and my grandparents and the elders in my family that we went to and said, hey, I remember when this happened or that happened. And they said, well, I didn't know any better at that time. So you'll have to excuse me for that, right? When I had my opportunity to have that same conversation with my children, my initial response was, well, that's how I was raised. I thought that I was doing the best with what I had. I modified a lot of what I went through so that you didn't have to go through that. That was my standing. That was my defense. At that time, it was not at all in my mind that was the wrong answer. I figured because I'd made different changes, I'd protected my children from things that I felt I hadn't been protected from. I thought that I did a better job. But I was being the one judging my children's experience through my eyes, not through their experience. And that's what's important about the healing portion of parental estrangement, the healing portion of us as women, as the parent, as the mom. How do we get to address things that need addressing, right? If we're only seeing them through our sight, we're only seeing them through our perspective. We can't give an accurate assessment of the type of parent that we were based on what we felt our children needed. That's not fair to them. Each child, and I've said this in a couple of more videos, each child has a different set of needs. And although we may have intended well, we may have intended to fulfill those needs to the best of our ability, maybe we didn't. Is that a reflection of us as being a bad parent? Not if it wasn't intentional. If you tried and you just didn't have the tools, that's understandable. No one's blaming you for not having the information. This is the discussion more along the lines of, but how did it impact your children, right? Not looking at it through the lens of what tools or access we had. That's actually, a portion of your experience, right? That's a portion of it. And I don't want to take that away from you. I didn't take that away from me. I just had to learn a different way of processing the information that was being given to me by my children, right? So when they said, well, I didn't have to have all of the, toys and money and shoes and clothes and all the money. I would have rather have had your time, right? Because I was working full-time, overtime. Well, my initial response was, but you didn't want for anything. I took care of you. That was only me. I didn't have help. What I learned during this process was I needed to hear their side of the story. I needed to hear what was painful for them. And although my intentions were good, those intentions didn't matter if they felt that they had not had their needs met, right? It's not about a right and a wrong here. That's what I really want to emphasize, I guess. It's not about the right and the wrong here. It's about how it was received, not the intention. And so when we have these conversations as women, as moms within the community, I think it's only right that we create brave spaces for ourselves, yes. But it's also right that we keep one another accountable, right? I struggled back and forth with bringing the conversation about how environmental factors that are beyond our control contribute here. But I'm going to do a whole video about that. But I don't want to leave out the fact that systemic and structural racism plays a huge part in how a parent is able to be present for their child. It plays a huge part. A parent in survival mode does not have access to all of their resources within them being present with their children as a parent who's not experiencing those type of systems and barriers, right? Now, is that to say that they don't have systems and barriers that encroach on their parenting? No, it's not to say that. I'm not taking that away from other parents who may not be of the BIPOC communities. What I'm saying is those additional barriers that we face as parents can drain a lot of our resources that we are not able to be available to our children as wholly and fully as we could be. Okay, so I didn't want to leave that out as a factor. But getting back to accountability and the importance of accountability. Having your feelings validated, I don't care who you are. Having your feelings validated and being heard, if you've been harmed, if you've been offended, if you've been taken lightly, that's a huge bonus and plus to you because you're able to say, okay, I feel heard, right? There's more receptivity. You're more receptive, right? I don't know if receptivity is even a word, but you're more receptive to hearing and being able to say, well, you know what? I feel heard. Maybe there's something here that we can work on, right? And so when we start looking at, well, I don't understand why I'm still not able to have a discussion with my adult child. Has it been a roadblock placed there between you guys because there's no accountability? Has there been a roadblock placed there because maybe they didn't feel heard, right? Now, at the same time, and I say this because I know both sides of this coin. There are instances where a parent is being blamed for things that are not their issue, that was nowhere near their control, right? It's more about the adult child not wanting to take responsibility for their behavior, for how their life has turned out because of decisions they've made, right? that's not the parent's responsibility. I'm not asking parents to go in blindly and say, oh, well, you know what? That's my fault. Oh, that happened because of how I parented you. Oh, you know, you don't have to take accountability for that. That is all on me. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, if you've caused harm, and that harm being in mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, if you've caused harm, you have every right to be accountable. You should be accountable for that. What you shouldn't be accountable for, excuse me, what you shouldn't be accountable for are decisions that your adult child made that landed them into consequences, and they want you to be responsible for that. That's not what I'm asking for. If you didn't cause harm, but that you failed to set boundaries. I talked about this in a video a couple of episodes back, I think. If there is something where the parent gave too much, didn't set enough boundaries, right? And they decided as the child, you know, became an adult, and maybe, you know, we've had a lot of things that happened in our society, in our country. Economically, we've had 2 recessions, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So maybe the parent decides they have to self-preserve. You know, it's about self-preservation. And they had to cut off some financial um, um, assistance that they were given to their children. And now the child has decided to punish the parent by not speaking to the parent. That's a form of parental estrangement too, but it's with manipulation and exploitation. And I talked about that in another video about being exploited, right? We don't want parents, I don't want parents rather, to be exploited in order to have contact with their children. And that's where accountability for ourselves, where we make a decision about our own self-preservation, our own self-care, and that is not putting ourselves into debt, trying to hang on to a relationship with the child who is hell-bent on using their absence as a means of exploiting the parent, right? And so that's another whole video I'll be doing to have more discussions along that line of how to protect yourself. I talked about it briefly in another video where I shared how much money through credit.com or creditcard.com did a survey on how much money parents were spending on their children, right? And these are adult children, and it was upwards of, I think it was $4,000 plus monthly parents were spending, or was it annually? I can't remember. You'll have to check that video out. But that's not okay. That's not what we're going for here in terms of accountability, being used and being a doormat, a passive doormat. That's not what I'm advocating for. What I'm advocating for is, if you've caused harm, to make sure that you're accountable, because that is where the healing of your relationship with your adult child has an opportunity to start to, you know, to happen. It doesn't happen by denial. It doesn't happen by asking your adult children to just let it go and start fresh. Because that, at some point, that's still impacting their lives, just as our lives are still impacted by things that we didn't address with our parents or our grandparents, okay? And so, what else did I want to cover here? Accountability in terms of setting boundaries. As parents, well, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. For me, it has been very difficult setting boundaries around what I will do as a parent in terms of supporting an adult child, in terms of helping them to, you know, navigate difficulties that may come up in their lives that they need assistance with, right? Some things we have to remain neutral on as parents for our own sanity, and to give them an opportunity to have a growth period, right? To experience something as a result of their actions or decisions, to experience those repercussions, because they're either going to learn and grow from them that time, or they're going to repeat them. And the most difficult part is for us to be repeating those actions with them, or repeating the repercussions of their decisions with them. That's not fair to us as parents, right? And something I've noticed, and it's in my limited interactions with other parents who are going through parental estrangement, is that a lot of times we can get exploited. Other parents I've talked to have experienced that as well, where, oh, well, since we're friends again and we're talking again, do you think you could help me with this bill? Or do you think you could loan me this or that and the other? And then you can say, the parent says, well, in my case, I said, yeah, we can loan you this and help you to get that together, right? And then not to pay the loan back after having set parameters. This is how it needs to be paid back. And then when you address that, then now, oh, you're cut off. Everything you did to me as a child, this just brought it all back up to me. And this is why I'm in this situation now, because you caused this to happen, and it was a chain of events that happened that caused this. That's not okay. And I spent a lot of time at the bottom of that barrel battling that demon. And I'm hoping to save other parents from having to go through that. That's not necessary. You don't have to, allow yourself to be exploited in order to have a relationship with your adult child. Okay? What I wanted to cover before I get out of this, because I try to keep these to 30 minutes and I'm at the 22-minute mark. Your relationship with your parents is something that is going to surface for you during parental estrangement. How you are able to navigate that is going to enhance who you are going to become as you heal, right? As much as the new information you're going to learn will enhance who you are becoming. The reason I say that, the more you try to suppress the things that happened to you in your childhood, the more you have to build a personality and an individual who's capable of functioning underneath the veil of that, okay? One of the things I've learned on this journey and developing myself as an individual is how much our childhood traumas impact our lives, how much it informs our parenting, it informs our relationship with other people, it informs our relationship with ourselves, and it informs our relationship with our parents, grandparents, whomever we had experienced childhood trauma with, including neglect. If we don't address that, we never get to fully live in our fullness, because those experiences have created the personality that we have in our lives before we address those, okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is the person that you are today is different than the person you will be if you address those issues, okay? There's a certain amount of freedom that comes with addressing trauma, addressing childhood abuse. There's a different amount of freedom that comes with that. For me, it has been liberating. It has given me a new lease on life. Did it happen overnight? No. That took time. And the most brutal part of that healing process was getting adjusted to not living underneath all of that pressure, underneath all of that pain, all of that grief that was suppressed, okay? That takes up space in our mind, our heart, and our spirit. So once we get that addressed, it makes it lighter. Does it go away? For me, it didn't. Maybe some people have that experience where it just, they don't have to worry about dealing or coping with it anymore. Some of us, like myself, we still navigate parts of our personality that were wounded, right? And so we have to work a little harder to see people outside of that wounded lens that we carried with us for so many years. When you see people, online, and people who are coaches, and they give their testimonies and they say to you, this is where I used to be, but this is where I am today. What happens is it cuts out that middle part where the pain, the suffering, the snot and the tears and the depression and the anxiety and the feeling like you're not doing enough and that you're not making progress. It cuts those periods out. It cuts the periods out where you feel weird because you don't feel as burdened down as you did with the childhood traumas and the abuse and the pain and the suffering that comes with that. Okay? People don't tell you that you will feel guilty about not feeling bad anymore. Okay? That happens. It's part of your process. It's part of your growth. It's part of your releasing the old parts of you. I really want you to be very successful on your journey to finding out who you truly are. And I'm hoping that me sharing some very vulnerable and painful parts of my journey, within reason, of course, with you, gives you permission to step a little further off the ledge and try a little more, to try new things more, to try experiencing therapy, to try experiencing addressing things that may have been harmful and painful to you in your past, letting them free, allowing them to be released so that you can be free, so that you, the true person of who you are, the true essence of your being that was robbed from you for years because you've had to suppress, because you've had to keep the family secrets, because you've had to pretend that things were okay even though you never received an apology. And some of us will never get that apology. We will learn to live without that apology. And I've had to learn to do that. And was it easy? No, it wasn't. But I found my value. I found that I don't have to stay the same person that I am just because it's comfortable, just because it's safer. I found that I could actually go out and live without the braces on myself. I could live in spite of the mistakes and harm that I may have caused my children because I didn't know any better. I learned to be accountable. I learned to be vulnerable enough to hear them, to listen, and to be present. Does that mean it removes everything that they may have experienced as a result of my ignorance? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that I gave them an opportunity to be able to heal a portion of them by telling their own story in their own words, in their own experiences. And that's what all of us deserve. It's what we all deserve. And so I'm hoping that something I shared with you here today has served you. I hope it encourages you to take the next step in your healing and your accountability to yourself and to your adult children, to your relationships around you. They are all impacted by if we heal or if we choose not to. Again, I'm LaShawn. I support moms who are navigating parental estrangement, who may be empty nesters. And I do that by prioritizing their accountability, their healing, their self-care, and a commitment to lifelong learning. Join the community. I'd love to have you. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.